Hi, I'm Valerie Englehart, and in this video I am going to paint a celestial elephant using a limited color palette on hot press paper. So this was part of Inktober's 2023 actually, prompts, and I think the prompt was just celestial. And I thought, ooh, let's do an elephant that instead of spraying water, it sprays a galaxy. Now, I typically do not paint with a preliminary sketch, so I am just going straight in. I'm using Cosmic Sound by Rockwell Canada, and I like it because it's a granulating paint and it's really dark. And what's great about dark watercolor is it means I get the full range of values, because to get a really light color, I just have to add a lot of water and poof, you got a light value. And for the lightest values, I'll just leave the paper white. But then wherever I want things to get really super dark, that's great for that really dark paint. So this elephant itself is really only going to be painted with one color, and I'm going to be focusing on my shapes and my values to create form. Now, I'm actually not speeding this video up at all, so you get to see how I make decisions as I go in real time. But that being said, this is still a fairly quick painting. I paint it in roughly 10 minutes. Now that does not include drying time. There are segments where with watercolor, you just gotta let it dry. You can bring out a blow dryer or a heat tool. I personally prefer to let my watercolor dry naturally, but because this was a study and time was of the essence, you won't see a video of it, but I do pull out the blow dryer to speed things up. Now, one of the reasons I think I like to paint elephants is I think their wrinkles are pretty fascinating. I don't know, I just really like all of those extra lines. Maybe because it breaks up the shape. I've not really explored why I like elephants, so maybe that's something I should think about and see how that applies to other things. So for example, if I like painting wrinkles so much, maybe I should look into painting older humans. But that's not why we're here. There I painted some of the wrinkles and then I went and softened it with just some water, and that's because it's not at the focal point of my painting, so I want those lines to be there, and they're still there. But I just wanted to soften them, make them a little mistier, a little more like you have to imagine that they're there. But it's obvious I know they're there. But do you know they're there? You know they're there. You know what an elephant looks like, and you watched me paint it. So at this point, I am putting in the tusk. And because the tusk is white, I'm going to be using light values. Going up the trunk now, and my reference image is an elephant that is lifting its trunk. It's not spraying water, but it is definitely in that like backwards C curve, and that's really all I need. Now, since I don't use a sketch, in order to determine where things go, for starters, I use a Notonizer, which allows me to isolate everything by how light or dark a shape is. So right now what I'm looking at is not a picture of an elephant exactly. I am looking at an image of an elephant that I've isolated into 3 or 4 values, a light, a midtone, and a dark. And the lightest values, usually I'll leave white, but if there's enough of them, and especially for a subject such as this, I will fill it in with a very light wash of paint. But the reason I isolate the values is so I can focus on my shadows, because one thing with watercolor, you can't really paint over it like you do oil and acrylic, so you need to be confident when you put down your dark tones. And using a Notonizer gives me that confidence that I can see those shapes and placement fully, and therefore I know that as long as something looks good in black and white and you can tell what it is, if I go in with similar strength of color, I can achieve the same effect. So if you want to paint, really, whether or not you use a sketch, I recommend a Notonizer. You can always do a value sketch, and the benefit of a value sketch is you can change the values, especially for landscapes. Like if you take a picture of a house in the distance. But if you do value sketches, you don't have to stick with the photo, you can just stick with the shapes and change it up. But you're not here for that. You're here for this beautiful elephant. But if you do want to know more about doing value sketches and changing things around, let me know in the comments, because I would be happy to maybe brush on that in a future video if that would help you out. But for now, I'm putting in the eye, and because this is a smaller piece of paper, it's like 10 by 8, it doesn't need to be big. Elephants don't really have big eyes, and we as humans put a lot of importance on eyes, so I really, truly recommend pay attention to how big that eye actually is. Hi, Valerie here. I just wanted to pop in real quick and ask, do you want to paint with bold, vibrant watercolor? Well, I teach you how to paint this beautiful, dare I say, elegant elephant using bright tube paints and lovely texture effects. Just go down to the link below, and it doesn't cost any money. Sign up and you get a free watercolor lesson along with the line art so you can follow along. Okay, back to the video. And welcome back. If you hear some interference, it's because my cat jumped into my lap and he is so happy and purring so loud. So at this point in the video, my elephant has dried and I am working on the galaxy that it is creating. So I've gone in with my Cosmic Sound, my darkest value, and I'm just using a size 8 round brush. I'm trying to use the same brush for the whole thing because this is such a quick study. I only gave myself a maximum of half an hour to do this, including the drying time. So I'm going in and I'm keeping things loose and wet, but I'm gonna wanna go in because galaxies usually have an explosion of colors. I'm going in with my Palaiba Diamond Blue, one of my favorite colors, to bring a lot of visual interest. But when doing these sort of galaxies, it's great to go wet into wet, which, if you don't know, means put wet paint onto wet paper or wet paint into already wet paint. And because it's watercolor, it will merge and diffuse and bleed and blend organically. I mean, of course, I'm going to encourage certain things, but with watercolor, it's best to let it do the magic. Like, it does most of the work for you. It's just good to practice how to make it work, since different pigments do react differently. Now, I want to go kind of blingy, so I pulled out my Daniel Smith Iridescent Electric Blue. This adds just like a neon glittery pop to the galaxy portion. And it is probably one of my favorite iridescent paints. Now, I'm noticing it looks kind of like a smog cloud, so I'm going in and I'm wetting the paper around it so that it softly diffuses. And I've waited not to do it too quickly, because if I did it too soon, it would likely lose its form. I did want it to keep a recognizable form, but it's a galaxy, it's outer space. I want it to fill the space it's in. And I do that by wetting the paper. And as you can see, it's kind of diffusing and bleeding outwards. Now I'm going in with some gouache, wet into wet, just to add a milky creaminess, like the Milky Way, for instance. Just giving little ideas of baby star nurseries and nebulas forming. And now I'm just tapping, because those will be just some stars, but really diffuse, the ones that are very, very far away. All right, now that has dried, and I let that dry naturally because I wanted all of those cool edges, I've gone in with a toothbrush, put on some fresh, wet wash, and I'm just spattering the paper to create those clusters of stars. And here's the finished painting. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and if you like this video, press that like button so I know to make more like it, and if you want to see more, press that subscribe button because I make videos every Monday and Thursday. Anyway, thanks for watching. Check in later. Bye!